Morning. Hope you guys are enjoying the snow out there. Because of that, obviously, we are not meeting in the church building, but I did want to give us a little message that maybe we could take throughout the week and try to tie something between what we did last week as we spoke about the Beatitudes and what we're going to be doing next week, what we were supposed to do this week, and what we're going to be doing next week regarding Jesus' statements about you have heard, but I tell you. So there's several of those, and we're going to talk about those next week. And last week, of course, we talked about the Beatitudes, and all of this is from the Sermon on the Mount, which we find in Matthew chapter 5. And we're going to look through that really quickly to remind ourselves what the Beatitudes are doing and to prepare ourselves for what Jesus is doing when he says, you have heard, but I tell you. So let's go back to the Beatitudes really quick and let's take a look at what those say. We see that there's 8 of them, and the 8 of them give us these attributes of Christian. And that's the point I want to make. The point is that these Beatitudes are not steps to take to become a good Christian, or they're not things to do to check off whether I'm going to heaven. What they are is it describes somebody who actually is a Christian. And so the first 4 Beatitudes describe what it looks like to become justified, to be made right with God. And as we look at those, we see that the first thing that has to happen is that you have to become poor in spirit. You have to be broken. You have to know you're a sinner. You have to know that you don't deserve heaven. You have to know there's nothing you can do to get to heaven. And then you have to mourn that sin. You have to mourn the fact that you're sinful and that you're not going to heaven and that you're going to be separated from God. And that's right. It's not wrong. It's actually right because you don't deserve it. And then you have to be meek and you have to realize there's nothing I can do about it. It doesn't matter how many good things I do. I can never make up for the fact that I've fallen short like this. And so you need to desire, hunger and thirst for righteousness, hunger and thirst for Jesus, hunger and thirst for God, and say, Lord, I need you. I need you. And when you get to that point, that's when we call justified in the Lord, right? You are now justified. You are now made right with God. And then the second 4 Beatitudes show us what sanctification looks like, what it looks like to live that life now that you're saved, now that you've been justified. And so you're going to be merciful because you've received mercy. You're going to be pure in heart because you're going to have the same heart as God has. You're going to be a peacemaker because you're going to want to share the peace that you've received, that now that you have with God, with others so that they can have that peace. You're going to be a peacemaker. And through all that, you are now going to be persecuted for righteousness' sake because the world hates God and Jesus. They want to shut us down. They want to stop us. They want to get rid of us. And so they will persecute us. When we feel that persecution, it's not because we're doing something wrong. It's because we're being faithful to that Christian walk and to that Christian gospel. And that's what the Beatitudes are showing us. They're showing us who belongs to the kingdom. And when Jesus starts the next section where he says, you have heard, but I say, he's talking about what kingdom people look like, how they live. And so we're moving from who we are in the Beatitudes, and that's why the Sermon on the Mount starts with the Beatitudes, who we are to obedience. And one of the problems we see in Christianity is that oftentimes it's the opposite. We go from obedience thinking that obedience will make us good Christians. But it's the exact opposite. We can never be obedient enough or good enough to be made right with God. And so we need to recognize first who we are and who God is, and then that will lead us into obedience. And as we look at those sayings that Jesus gives us, there's going to be 6 of them. When we look at those sayings that Jesus gives us about, you have heard, but I am telling you this instead, we're going to see that he's not telling us that I'm going to make the law more hard for you. I'm going to make it more difficult for you. He's not saying that. What he's saying is that if you truly understand the law in the first place, this is who you are. This is how you will act. So all of these things, the Pharisees had been teaching these laws. You have heard. The Pharisees have been teaching these laws, making it a bunch of legalism, making it about following the letter of the law. And Jesus is going to flip that and say, no, it's not about following the letter of the law. It's about what is the spirit of the law, and are you living that kind of life? Are you living a life that's about the spirit of the law and not living a life that's based on your performance? It's about your heart and not your actions. Now, your actions come out of your heart, but what Jesus is saying is your actions by themselves mean nothing. And right, and so that we get down to some Old Testament things where we look at, for instance, Psalm 51. And I have here in Psalm 51, verse 16 through 17, it says this: "For you do not delight in sacrifice, otherwise I would give it. You are not pleased with burnt offering. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit. A broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise." So as we look at that, we recognize that that's the point of the Sermon on the Mount. And that's the point of Jesus' sayings here. You have heard, but I tell you. Going all the way back to the time of David, when he writes this psalm, we understand that God's heart is not about us fulfilling specific things, rituals, religious obligations, but what it is, it's about your heart. And that's what Jesus wants us to see when he gets into these sayings. You have heard, but I tell you. Jesus doesn't begin the Sermon on the Mount with rules to follow. He begins with the Beatitudes. What a transformed heart looks like. Then, next week, we're going to learn about you have heard, but I tell you. That's how transformed lives live. So with that, until next week, and we get into the meat of that message, may God bless you. Be safe in the snow. Stay warm. God bless you all.